The Big Door Prize by M.O. Walsh. Deerfield, Louisiana is a sleepy little town where not much happens. The people are friendly, and the weather is usually pleasant, but it is a place where everyone knows everyone else and things are rarely a surprise. This normalcy, however, is disrupted when a mysterious machine appears at the local grocery store, Johnson's. The machine is called Dynamics, and for the low price of $2, it promises to analyze your DNA and tell you your true potential in life. Word gets around that people are receiving some pretty outlandish readings, and this quickly turns the town upside down. Lifelong friends are abandoning careers and family and embracing new and sometimes improbable destinies. Deerfield is a-buzzing as the town prepares for its bicentennial celebration. Douglas Hubbard, the local history teacher and all-around good guy, thinks the machine is a bunch of hooey. He is a rational person and cannot fathom how a DNA analysis could possibly predict one's future, let alone change it. Douglas's wife, Cherilyn, however, finds the idea of DNA mix intriguing. She has been feeling unwell lately, suffering from headaches and dizzy spells, and perhaps a little bored with her life as a housewife and crafter. Cherilyn has secretly tried the machine a few times, and with each readout, her interest has grown. It seems that her true potential in life, that, according to Dynamics, is royalty. Cherilyn has begun to research the world of royalty, and this leads her to the Wikipedia page of Princess Susan of Oman. This woman not only has a similar background to Cherilyn, but also looks a great deal like her, and this sparks in Cherilyn a desire to be someone else. She begins to cook exotic dishes, tries on old dresses, and reads books about sultans and sheiks. Cherilyn is ashamed to tell Douglas about any of this, but as she knows he would likely dismiss her fantasies. But she can no longer deny that she wants something more than what Deerfield has provided her. After Douglas complains that he feels he has reached a dead end in life, that he has not accomplished much, and regrets never having tried to be a jazz musician, Cherilyn encourages him to finally pursue his dream. She shaves off his trademark mustache, something he believes is necessary to properly play the trombone, and the two of them support each other in their newfound aspirations. But Cherilyn is also struck by the way Douglas looks so different without his mustache, and she realizes, on some level, that she no longer knows who her husband is. This makes her even more certain that the only way for her to be happy is to be someone else entirely. Douglas secretly finds Cherilyn's readouts, and although he wants to be supportive, cannot understand how she could put any stock into such a ridiculous machine. He finds her behavior embarrassing, and yet also begins to wonder if he is the one to blame. Maybe her dissatisfaction is because of him, he thinks, because of his own predictability, his lack of ambition, his unwillingness to try new things. He is now determined to learn the trombone and make their lives together more exciting. Jacob Richieu is a high school student who has always felt overshadowed by his brother Toby, a popular athlete who was killed a few months earlier in a drunk driving accident. Jacob is quiet and smart and likes to keep to himself. His grades are excellent, and although most kids at school barely know who he is, Jacob is not unhappy with his life. His only real friend is a boy named Denny Cadwalder, an awkward kid who shares Jacob's interest in Pokemon, but who is also, Jacob feels, more of a follower than a friend. He likes Denny, but does not trust him. Jacob's world is turned upside down, however, when Toby's ex-girlfriend, Trina Todd, begins texting and calling him. She is an outcast and a bit of a troublemaker, and has a dark and mysterious personality. Trina tells Jacob that Toby's accident was not an accident at all, but rather some sort of hazing gone wrong. She believes the other guys on his baseball team, the ones she calls the dickheads, are to blame for Toby's death, and she is now plotting revenge. Jacob listens to Trina and lets her confide in him. He understands, on some level, how she could believe this. His brother was a great person and had a lot of friends, but also ran with a bad crowd. These guys were always loud and obnoxious and acted as if the rules didn't apply to them. As such, Jacob has always hated these people too, especially since Toby's death. He wishes that they would be punished. But Jacob also gets the sense that Trina may not be telling him everything. Her hints about what happened, her cryptic comments about needing Jacob's help, make him wonder about her true motivations. He feels that she is leaving things out. Jacob also gets the sense that Trina may not be mentally well, and he feels conflicted about wanting to help her. The two of them begin hanging out after school and skipping class. Trina's certainty about Toby's death begins to infect Jacob, and he finds himself thinking dark and terrible thoughts about what he'd like to do to the other guys on his brother's baseball team. Jacob can no longer tell if he's doing this to help Trina or because of himself, and he tries to ignore the feeling that he is in over his head. The two of them get caught kissing by a classmate, and Trina threatens Jacob by posting a picture of them on Instagram. Now, no matter what happens, she tells him, you're implicated. Meanwhile, Douglas takes his first trombone lesson with Jeffrey Mallow, a recently retired jazz musician who has moved to Deerfield from New Orleans in search of a simpler life. Jeffrey is a genius who can play any instrument he picks up, and Douglas is immediately starstruck by his talent. As they chat after the lesson, Douglas confesses that he is ashamed to tell Sherilyn about his own dynamics reading. It seems that Douglas's true potential is, unbelievably, to be a whistler and a teacher, the exact things he already is. Douglas feels insulted and deflated by this readout, but Jeffrey seems understanding. He confides in Douglas that he, too, has received a surprising readout from the dynamics machine. It seems that Jeffrey, despite having spent his entire adult life as a professional musician, is actually meant to be a magician. He tells Douglas that, ever since he was a kid, he had always kept a small box of magic tricks. He'd taken them with him on each move, from one apartment to another, even when leaving other valuable possessions behind. I couldn't tell you why, Jeffrey says, but I always kept these magic tricks. All my life, I felt like they were important. And now, here we are. It all makes sense. Douglas is still unconvinced, but after Jeffrey performs a few magic tricks, making Douglas's trombone case and watch disappear and reappear, and then shows him that the two cards Jeffrey somehow slipped into the case while Douglas wasn't looking were both of hearts, Douglas feels his resolve beginning to waver. Maybe Jeffrey is right, he thinks. Maybe this machine really can tell you something about yourself. This idea makes Douglas feel guilty about the way he dismissed Sherilyn's own readout, and he is now determined to embrace her dreams. He wants to be the supportive husband he has always been. Jacob tries to break things off with Trina, but she is persistent in her pursuit of him, and her anger seems to be growing. Trina's father, Trina Todd, is a worthless man who has been neglecting her, and so Father Pete, her uncle, has stepped in to try and help. He arranged for her to transfer to Deerfield Catholic, paid her tuition, even took her shopping for school uniforms. But Trina is openly hostile toward him as well, and doesn't seem to want any help. She has been skipping school and hanging out with Jacob in the woods behind the school building. After another conversation with Trina about stealing and guns, Jacob becomes increasingly concerned that she is going to do something rash. His resolve begins to fade. Maybe the dickheads really are guilty, he thinks, and maybe Toby really did get what he deserved. Jacob sends Trina the blueprints of Deerfield Catholic, which he steals from his father, and agrees to help her plan revenge. But Jacob does not like the way he feels about this, and is more convinced than ever that Trina is mentally ill. He knows that he should tell someone, that he should confess everything to his father, but he cannot. Principal Pat Howell has been trying to help Trina as well, but she too has been rebuffed. Trina is openly rebellious at school and has become a disciplinary problem. Pat has grown increasingly concerned about Trina's behavior and is worried that she may be mixed up in something illegal. But Pat has her own issues to deal with. It seems that her dynamics reading has also upended her life. Instead of principal, her true potential is to be a carpenter, and she has already decided to retire. Pat has bought herself some safety goggles and is now planning to build a house in the country. As if things weren't already complicated enough, Father Pete is also struggling with his own readout. Although outwardly a good priest and all-around stand-up guy, Pete has long harbored a secret desire. He loves to drink, and not just any sort of drink, really, but his own personal concoction of vodka and soda water made with 8 little pyramids of lime, served in a fancy cocktail glass with the St. Louis Cathedral on it. He has a whole ritual, done every night at 5, and is a man of habit. But he keeps all of this hidden, even from his parishioners and colleagues at school, where he is known as Father Pete. This is because, years ago, Pete was married and had a life with his wife Anna, who died unexpectedly. He still thinks about her every day and believes that his priesthood is a way of honoring her, even if it means he has to keep other parts of himself hidden. He remembers her fondly and says a little prayer to her every night as he takes that first sip. He feels closer to Anna when he drinks. Pete's DNA mix reading, however, has told him that his true potential is to be a bartender. This strikes Pete as the truest thing he has ever heard, but it also makes him worry about the choices he has made. He thinks about quitting the priesthood and opening up a bar, but then realizes that he is still too close to Anna to give up on her. He feels that he has to keep his promise to be the person she would want him to be. Trina comes up with a plan to enact her revenge on the dickheads and tells Jacob that she needs his help. She wants to scare them, to make them feel as afraid as she felt on the night Toby died, and although Jacob tries to back out, he is scared of what Trina might do if he doesn't help her. So he agrees to meet her at a hollowed log in the woods behind the school building on Friday night. This is the same night that Deerfield Catholic is holding the opening ceremonies for the bicentennial, and all of the dickheads will be there. Trina slips Jacob a handwritten, homemade dynamics reading. It looks like the others, but feels different. Jacob flips it over and sees his name written in small, careful handwriting. At the bottom it reads, Potential Life Station, Toby Richieu. This makes Jacob feel sick. He has no idea what Trina means by this, but he knows it's not good. Douglas has been practicing his trombone and is excited about his next lesson with Jeffrey. After another session in which he plays all the wrong notes, Jeffrey suggests that maybe Douglas could just whistle for a while, and this unlocks something in Douglas. He starts whistling in ways he'd never even imagined, playing scales and riffs he doesn't know the names of. And as he gets going, Jeffrey calls in a few of his old friends from New Orleans who are in a jazz band called the Bedknobs and Broomsticks. The band is playing at the bicentennial on Saturday, and Jeffrey invites them over to jam with Douglas. Douglas has always fantasized about this sort of thing, and yet, as he plays with them, has a difficult time escaping his own dark thoughts about Sherilyn. After she calls him and asks him to stop whistling and tells him she will be late tonight, Douglas feels that his whole life may be falling apart. When Douglas gets back to Jeffrey's apartment, he is struck by the fact that his car is gone. Maybe Sherilyn is the one who is running around, he thinks. Maybe she is cheating on him with Bruce Newman, who had once confessed to Douglas that he was in love with Sherilyn. And before he can even think too much about it, Bruce calls and tells him that Sherilyn is in the hospital. "I'm the one that drove her here," he says. Douglas is devastated, and when he arrives at the hospital and sees Sherilyn sitting on the bed, wearing an odd-looking dress and with her hands painted brown, he finally loses his mind. He attacks Deuce in the hallway, and as they fight, 2 blue tickets fall out of Deuce's shirt pocket. Douglas picks them up and flips them over, and there it is. Deuce Newman's D-Namix reading, Potential Life Station, Royalty. And not only that, Deuce had done it twice. This is when Douglas realizes that Deuce had been scheming as well, that he too had been seduced by Sherilyn's readout. Jacob tries to walk home from school, but cannot. He is too confused about everything. The Twitter account, the video, the gun in the bag. He turns around and heads back toward the school. It is the night of the bicentennial kickoff, and the whole town will be there, including the dickheads. And the more Jacob thinks about what Trina has planned, the more he knows he needs to stop it. He breaks into Toby's locker and finds an envelope and a rock. Inside of it is a blue piece of paper. When Jacob opens it, he feels sick. He sees his name at the top, and at the bottom, it reads, Potential Life Station, Toby Richieu. Father Pete has been in the confessional booth all day and cannot escape the feeling that the world is a dark and confusing place. He thinks about quitting the priesthood and starting a new life for himself, a better life. He could still be a bartender, he thinks, and that's not such a bad way to go about things considering the circumstances. He thinks about Anna and wonders what she would say about all of this. He has to believe that she would forgive him. After driving Douglas to Jeffrey's apartment, Pete takes Cherylyn's out back and heads for Lanny's house. He wants to see if Trina is there, to have a talk with her, to try and help her figure things out. But the scene he finds is unexpected. Trina's car is gone along with her father, and a strange man is there on the couch. He has been beaten and the house looks as though it has been robbed. He walks through the rooms looking for Trina, calling her name. In her bedroom, he sees her laptop open to a Twitter page that shows a picture of a blue duffel bag with a shotgun in it. The tweet is a countdown that ends today. He realizes that she has been running the Twitter account and has something terrible planned for tonight. He goes to call the police and, as he does, gets struck from behind. When Douglas learns from Tipsy that Pete has been assaulted and robbed, that Lanny is missing, and that there is an APB out on Trina for Grand Theft Auto, he can no longer deny that perhaps something is terribly wrong. He knows that he needs to find Jacob, that he needs to talk to him, but Jacob is gone too. Jacob runs as fast as he can down the path that leads from the school to the town square, trying to beat the clock and get to the log before Trina. He's going to tell her that he knows, that he understands, that he can help. He hopes that he can talk her out of whatever she has planned, but when he arrives at the log, it is too late. His blue duffel bag is there, just like the one he saw on Twitter, the same one the police are looking for, and inside it, a shotgun. He hears a series of texts from Trina. The last one reads simply, "Who better than you?" Jacob knows that he has to call his father, and as he reaches for his phone, sees a series of lights. The police are there. It turns out that Trina, in her anger, has enlisted the help of Richieu, a known drug addict and thief, to help her rob her father. She has stolen Lanny's car, as well as Pete's truck, and tricked Ricky into thinking there were guns at the house. Ricky and his girlfriend Tessa have been on a crime spree, and the police have been searching for them. Trina has also set up Jacob, knowing the police would find him at the hollowed log with a shotgun, just like the one she had pictured on the Twitter account. Her plan is simple. Someone needs to pay for Toby's death, and who better than Jacob? He looks just like Toby, and that's all that matters. She wants him to take the blame, just as she believes she has been blamed for Toby's death. But Jacob's father, Hank Richieu, the town mayor, shows up before the police can make an arrest. He believes Jacob is being attacked, and in his attempt to help his son, accidentally shoots himself in the foot. After arriving at the hospital, Cherylyn is diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. She is pregnant, but it is unclear what effect the MS will have on her pregnancy, or if it will progress to where she is no longer able to care for herself. Cherylyn has always been a healthy person who looks out for others, and she is devastated by the diagnosis. She is worried that she will no longer be able to care for her mother, who suffers from dementia, nor be a good mother to the child she is carrying. She regrets the way she treated Douglas and feels that he must be disappointed with her. He wanted her to be happy, and instead, she is sick, and she knows this is not a good thing. When Douglas learns about the pregnancy, he is filled with an unexpected joy. He forgets about his argument with Cherylyn, forgets about his own dynamics reading, forgets about his jealousy of Bruce, and sits beside her on the hospital bed. He is now the one who is hopeful for the future and knows that they can make it work. He thinks of his wife in the living room, his wife on the couch, his wife at the table, his wife in the car, and in this vision he can see himself beside her. He does not know how she can be both sick and pregnant, but it does not matter to him. There are good doctors here to help, and he will take care of her too. He will make a new plan. Jacob confesses to his father the awful truth about what he has done. He tells him everything about Trina, about Toby, about the way he was feeling and how he wanted to hurt the dickheads and how he had let it all get out of hand. But instead of being angry, his father is supportive. He tells Jacob that he understands that they will make it through together and that it is time for the two of them to talk. He tells Jacob about his mother, about how Jacob reminds him of her, and about how much he has always loved them both. He tells him the story of the time Jacob's mother, long ago, spent an entire day trying to save a mosquito and how he had never seen anything more beautiful. Jacob realizes that his father has always been there for him, even in the times he did not know. He has been there for him all along. Father Pete arrives at the hospital and after learning that Sherilyn will be okay, heads to Jacob's room. He wants to know about Trina, and Jacob tells him everything. He shows him the video he found on Toby's phone, the one of Toby filming Trina. Pete watches the video, hears Toby's voice, sees Toby's face, and realizes that Trina had been telling the truth. He understands now why she is so angry and why she wanted revenge. He is ashamed of his brother-in-law, ashamed of the way he has treated Trina, and knows that he needs to do whatever he can to help her. He will go to Natchez and find her, he tells Jacob, and he will listen to her. That's the only thing he can do. After the sheriff leaves, Jacob looks into the next room to see the bassist from the Bedknobs and Broomsticks sitting on the examining table. Her arms are covered with colorful tattoos and she is crying into her hands. Jacob knows then that he is not the only one who feels lost. We are all lost, he thinks, but maybe if we are lucky, we can find each other along the way. He turns to look down the hall and sees Douglas Hubbard walking toward him, his arm in a sling. He has his wife's Outback keys in the other. Jacob walks up to him and says, "Mr. Hubbard, I need to ask you something." Douglas looks at him and says, "Anything." "I was wondering if you could give me a ride home." Douglas smiles at the request and says, "That's not really a question, Jacob, but you know what? I'd be glad to." The end. If you enjoyed this book breakdown, please consider liking this video and subscribing to get notified when we post our next breakdown.